Welcome to the Legit Football NFL podcast. Brian McFadden here. I'm joined by Aaron Salazar of the Has Been Sports podcast and Kevin Phillip Fox, returning superstar. You see, if you're watching on video, sporting the Bills beanie. Aaron, Cowboys fan, got the win. Kevin, Bills fan, got the win. Brian, Dolphins fan, we didn't get blown out.
Y'all fought hard.
I will take whatever I can get. We are going to be recapping all of the super wildcard weekend action that we just witnessed, and it was super, guys, I would say, for the most part, maybe except for last night's game. Aaron, we'll talk about that with your Cowboys. It was good football action, but before we get started, we're going to dive into each game. One of the people involved in this particular episode, our producer, Anthony Weiner, he didn't have any traction in the playoffs. His Lions missed the playoffs altogether. They should have been. I think we mentioned that they're actually number 3 in DVOA over the last 6 or 7 weeks in the entire NFL. They should have made it. But so here's what we're going to do. We're going to mention some Lions news right off the bat, and then we're going to jump into the games. The one good news you could get today, Anthony, is that your superstar offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, is actually coming back. Announced today, told everybody, and he had lots of suitors, and apparently he was a front runner for certain jobs. Guys, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Kevin, I'll start with you. How big of a win is this for the Lions?
I'm absolutely blown away for the Lions. It's incredible to see the organizational stability starting to set in a little bit. Ben Johnson's been a rock star, especially this past season. Unbelievable performance. Really, you could point to the defense as the thing that was maybe their Achilles heel. And even that stabilized over the course of the season. We can all agree that, like you said, top 6 in DVOA last couple weeks of the year. Tough pill to swallow, them not making the playoffs, especially as close as they got and still rallying to fight the Packers, even though they were playing for nothing, essentially. That was a really beautiful thing to see. So I would consider this a massive win for the organizational stability, especially for like the Jared Goss and the Amon-Ra. I think that's a huge win for the big pieces there.
Aaron, let's say that Rodgers is gone next year, either retires or decides to play for a different team. The Vikings, we've saw really, I think, what they are, and we'll talk about that game. Lions front runner for NFC North next year?
It's crazy to think that, but it's not too crazy to say right now because you continue with Jared Goff with, Ben Johnson coming around. He didn't have his Jameson Williams weapon all year long until like the last, 5 games. So maybe, coming off that ACL, I believe it's ACL tear,
right?
He'll be a problem next year because that boy got speed. And
it was a top 10 offense before they had Jameson Williams. Oh, yeah. That's dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just kind of keeping that continuity together with the Detroit Lions, like Kevin was saying, is big time for them. Just keep that going, keep the momentum riding high, and hopefully, if Aaron Rodgers leaves, then y'all can actually go out there and compete and make the playoffs.
I think even if Aaron Rodgers stays, they beat Rodgers twice. I think, and I see Anthony on the camera. If you're watching on YouTube, you can't see him, but he's got a big smile on his face while he's listening to us talk about this. This is not a parody. This is not an SNL skit. We are genuinely talking about the Lions. Aaron, you mentioned continuity. I think that's the big thing here. The best thing the Lions could have hoped for is to bring the whole band back together, and getting Ben Johnson to stay is a huge coup. I think that's a testament to Dan Campbell. I know that the Mannings had Campbell on the Manning cast last night. Did anybody catch that? I didn't. I just know he was on there. All right, I'd be interested to see how. I kind of want to watch that clip to hear Eli and Peyton with Dan Campbell. But that's it. That's all the love you're getting, Anthony. You're going to get a lot more love, I'm assuming, next year. Wow, you got a top 10 draft pick even on barely missing the playoffs. Arrow way up for Detroit. But let's go ahead and jump into the games from Super Wildcard Weekend. We'll start from Saturday and go all the way up to that kind of dreadful game last night on Monday night.
Fantastic game.
So, fantastic game if you're a Cowboys fan or a Tom Brady hater. Otherwise, not that entertaining. All right, so on Saturday, Seattle Seahawks, San Francisco 49ers, third time these teams have played this season. And it was 48-20. The first 2 matchups started off looking like it was going to be a little something. The Seahawks actually had the lead at halftime. Purdy a little shaky in the first half. Kevin, was there ever a shot where you thought the Seahawks were going to win this game? 49ers ultimately win 41-23, and it was not even close in the second half. What were you thinking at halftime with Seattle up?
Yeah, I'll be entirely honest with you. I definitely was thinking that all these playoff games would tighten it up a little bit. That's what I've learned in my, years of being a huge NFL fan is that, the margin for error gets a little smaller in the playoffs. And I thought that we would maybe see the potential experience of, not so much Geno Smith, but like, Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. I thought maybe they would play it a little closer. And in the first half, I thought we were getting that, and I was actually excited for like a good game and like a competitive game. I think the biggest takeaway that I have after the whole 4 quarters is that Brock Purdy is who we think he is, and it's actually becoming a really legitimate conversation for San Francisco's quarterback position in the offseason.
I like to think that conversation is already had. A lot of people are still on the fence. But I would like to have this conversation now, at least partially. There's still, he's played one playoff game. I understand that. I understand the context.
It's more than Trey Lance.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm going to say. Trey Lance had 2 years in this system. Jimmy G has had, 5 or 6 years in this system?
Yeah.
Purdy has looked better in his 7 or 8 games, whatever it is, than any of them did. And Jimmy G took him to a playoff. We got the stats at the bottom, and Anthony, once again, has brought all the stats. If you guys happen to catch, by the way, we didn't get a lot of YouTube views for this. We get a lot of YouTube views for our live show, but Anthony's got all the stats at the bottom. If you're listening to this in the podcast, you have to check it out on YouTube. Brock Purdy, 30 for 18, 332, 0 interceptions, 3 touchdowns.
Crazy.
The fact that he's done what he's done in such a short period of time, I gotta feel he's the front runner.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm at now too. Like I've been very much I love Trey Lance. I'm a huge advocate for traits. That's just one thing that it's easy for me to say, having been a Bills fan and been spoiled
Mr.
with
Traits.
been spoiled
Josh
with Mr.
Allen
Traits.
over there. Yeah,
seeing the traits pendulum swing in favor of a traitsy quarterback who learned to put it together mentally, and that's going to be a fun conversation for later in the podcast as well, because whatever. But it's cool to see that a quarterback like Brock Purdy, who, don't get me wrong, he's seems decently athletic. He's got a great grip on. He seems to be pretty accurate. I mean, the Twitter warriors are going to nitpick every mistake he makes because people are crowning him. But I'm here to tell you that I think it's about time we at least consider him as the front runner, maybe not the runaway, but at least the front runner for the starting job next year.
I think that's fair. Aaron, I want to get your take on this. Some people are like already comparing him to Montana and Brady, and like,
slow that down.
We don't need to do that. Why can't we just say that this guy is playing some great football, and he is? We can say, Kevin, he's the front runner for this job. I think he's honestly leaps and bounds ahead of Trey Lance right now. Where do you think this is coming from, Aaron? Why are people so happy to just like, oh, this guy's the next coming of Montana? Dude's played 7 games.
I don't know. We just like to compare people a lot. I mean, that's all we do. Quarterback comes out of college, we instantly comparing them to Mahomes, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott. That Jalen Hurts was compared to Dak when he came out. That's just what we like to do. And sometimes it's annoying when you start labeling, comparing them with the greats. John Montana, Tom Brady. Yes, he does have similar traits that they have or had, but let's let him get some years. Let's let him win that starting job next year, which I think he might be able to. I think the team's behind him right now, especially, that he keeps winning, especially in the playoffs. Trey Lance, he has an uphill climb to do. And I don't know if, he has a big arm, but this dude is deadly accurate though. And he can move around in the pocket nicely with composure, and he's still accurate on the run. Trey Lance, like, you got to be able to, be composed, because I know he would like to kind of just take off and run. If his first read's not there, maybe a second read or check down, then he's off running. But this guy, Brock Purdy, stays calm, cool, collective, and delivers dimes.
And the accuracy thing is one thing. I think that's one of the biggest things. 2 things with Purdy over Lance is the decisiveness, the decision making. That's crucial. This scheme is going to get receivers open for you. The Shanahan scheme is designed to give you open windows to throw to. You get it to the playmakers, they do their thing. Then accuracy to actually put the ball where it needs to be. Not just where they can catch it, but where they can continue to run with it, get yards after catch. That's what the entire Shanahan scheme is built on. We saw it work for Miami with McDaniel and getting Waddle and Hill in space, and the difference in quarterbacks there between Tua falling to Teddy, falling to Skylar Thompson. Obviously, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Lance, in his second offseason this year, before he got injured to start the season, had a 50% completion rate in practice. In training camp, where it's everything's scripted and set up for you, 50% completion rate. How can anybody, just because I don't think Shanahan really cares that they spend a bunch of draft capital on Lance. He wants somebody who can run his offense. He doesn't care if they spend 7 first-round picks on him. That's why I think Purdy has a clear edge, and I think he'll win and be the starter in 2023.
And I think a great point that Aaron made, and I'll bring it back to what you were saying, Brian, is that the composure is there. Yep. He's the last pick in the 7th round, and he is so poised. It is so fun to watch him play because it seems like the alarm bells are never going off. It seems like he has the scripted answer for every single defensive scenario that's coming his way, which is just so unique for a young quarterback. It's so unique, especially a young quarterback with no real draft pedigree. But here we are in this position, and it's exciting. I think what you were saying, Brian, that's really interesting. And I'm going to be, as an NFL fan, I'm going to be tracking this with all my might. I love the quarterback carousel. I love the coaching carousel. If Brock Purdy wins that starting job, does former 3rd overall pick Trey Lance stick around and hold a clipboard for a couple of years? Or does he go out and maybe seek a trade? Does he maybe force his way into a position where he can start and show what he has? Because that's a conversation to be had. I mean, we've seen Shanahan not care before. Like you said, you brought up draft capital with Shanahan. And historically, you got Mitchell playing over Sermon. You got guys playing over guys, regardless of draft position. Who's the better player? Who's the better fit for the offense? And that's exciting. That's an exciting development for 49ers fans and for Kyle Shanahan, because you could turn that into some assets, I think. You could turn Trey Lance into some assets. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you can. I don't know if you'll get like a 1st-round pick for Trey Lance because he's still not
I think
proven.
You will. You're right, but that's the thing. NFL GMs and coaches, they think they're the ones that can unlock the magic. So, yeah. I mean, look how many times people have given Baker Mayfield a shot, Sam Darnold a shot. And these were guys who we'd seen lots of tape on. The fact that you haven't seen tape on Lance is actually more intriguing to NFL GMs because they're like, well, this guy's only played 13 college games and 2 or 3 NFL games. And look at the traits, as Kevin said. Mm-hmm. Oh, what can I do with him? Oh, I'll throw you a 1st-round pick. Let's give him a shot. I actually think it benefits San Francisco that he hasn't played as much, because I think his stock would be down based on what we've seen so far, and everything we've heard coming out of camp is that his stock would be down if we'd seen a lot of play time. But on the other side, San Francisco, I don't think next year's the year they do it. They just saw the benefit of keeping Jimmy G on their roster to even get them to this position in the first place before Brock Purdy came along. So I think they see more than anyone right now the value of a backup quarterback. Now, the year after, 2024, would be the 4th year. Then they got to pick up his 5th-year option. I think that's more when we're looking at what happens after that. But let's talk more about the game. I like that we dove in that conversation. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about Purdy versus Lance next offseason, leading into the preseason for 2023. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
So Seattle got the lead. The one thing we mentioned on the preview show is the edge that Seattle had was their wide receivers versus the DB for San Francisco. And we saw DK Metcalf making plays. We saw, especially in the first half, Geno taking some shots, that 50-yard bomb to Geno to set up a field goal earlier in the game. They were making plays. They were doing what they had to. Ultimately, it wasn't enough. Aaron, how do you see this Niners team going forward? Do you think, who's going to stop them? I mean, your Cowboys are next.
Yeah, this Niners defense is crazy good. Like, they're definitely the best defense in the league. And I think it all starts there because they did kind of struggle a little bit in the first half with Geno Smith. He was out there, balling a little bit, DK Metcalf doing his thing. But this defense is lights out. They were able to get a fumble from Geno, and that turned the tide completely. I think it put them up by like 13 points because they went down the field and scored a touchdown. And then once they know that you're abandoning the run and they can just tee off on you with those pass rushers that they have, man, good luck. And Brock Purdy, he has a great offensive line. He has two very good running backs, elite running backs. Well, one's elite, one's really good. And, he's very poised, like we talked about earlier. So he has all the tools and weapons around him to make this team like continue to just dominate every single game that they play.
And I mentioned also in the preview, the one specific weakness on the Niners defense in the secondary is their second cornerback, Diamador Lenoir, has been grading at 55 in PFF for most of the season. He graded a 90 in this game. Their literal 1 weak point graded a 90. Charvarius Ward, even though he got had by DK a couple times, he certainly held his zone. He played physical, was on DK most of the game. Kevin, where's the weakness? Where's the weakness if the one guy who's supposed to be the weakness gets a 99 grade in the playoffs? Or
it's a really, really tough conversation to be had, because I think the important thing here, and I'm glad you brought up where the weakness is, because I think it's pretty clear that there isn't one. I think the big thing that it's important to remember here is that was Seattle. That was the 7 seed that really squeaked into the playoffs. We all wanted that to be Detroit. And if that was Detroit, I think you see a little bit of a different game. I think you maybe see a little bit more of a competitive game. I still don't know if Detroit's defense, and that's what it comes down to, is I felt like the way that San Francisco's offense just started firing on all cylinders. I went to get a snack and then there was 2 touchdowns. Like, it was the second half of that game was insane. And a lot of that, I think, is scheme. I think a lot of that is just Kyle Shanahan is always going to out-scheme the other guy. He's always going to make sure that his playmakers are going to have the ball in their hands with a position to make a play. And that's the question, is who is going to out-scheme Shanahan? And I don't, with all due respect, Aaron, I'm not sure if I see it happening this week. I think Dallas will at least have the dogs to put up a fight and do a little bit of maybe a track meet, unless Micah Parsons has something to say about it,
and he will.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Micah Parsons will probably get in there. I think Purdy. I think we might see the first instance of a shook Purdy this weekend.
They'll need it. That's literally all you can do is go after the rookie quarterback, even as good as he's been. They will need it. Let's not stick out in this game any longer. Good job on the Niners. They took care of business. I was never, even with Seattle up, I was like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
The Seahawks are up by 1 at halftime. Good for you, Pete. You know what? Pete Carroll did a fantastic job. I've mentioned it a bunch of times on the 30 Minutes of Football podcast that I picked Seattle 32nd in the preseason power rankings. I had zero expectations for them. I think a lot of people kind of had them in that range. I mean, they got rid of, well, Russ maybe to be determined now, but who we thought were 2 Hall of Famers in Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson. Yeah. And they were going to roll out Drew Lock or Geno Smith. It was like the writing was on the wall. They were relying on a ton of rookies. It just so happened that almost all of those rookies hit. So arrow up if you're a Seahawks fan, but this game was always going to be Seattle's. Really looking forward to see them play Dallas next week. So let's go to the other Saturday game. One of the most entertaining games. We were really looking forward to the QB matchup in this, but I think the story was more than just the 2 quarterbacks. So let's go through the game script. Chargers jump out to a 27-0 lead behind 4 interceptions from Trevor Lawrence, 3 in the first quarter alone. It's looking like, and I picked the Jags. I just thought that the Jags were a better team, certainly better coached. I've not been a Brandon Staley fan. Playing at home, all the momentum, everything that the Chargers did in Week 18 to lose to the Broncos. The question, I just thought that this was lining up to be a Jags win. And I even was in a group chat saying, boy, I got this one wrong. Chargers 27-0. But, man, you got to hand it to 2 people more than all. Doug Peterson for keeping these guys focused. They have come back in multiple games this year. They came back on their season. They started really slow and able to come back to take the AFC South. And then, of course, Trevor Lawrence. This is a big moment for him. Throwing 4 interceptions and coming back in his first ever playoff game in his second year in the league to throw 4 touchdowns to come back for the win. Aaron, I think we've finally seen Trevor Lawrence turn the corner, and he's, I think, right on the brink already of entering elite quarterback territory.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's starting to come up there. Just the way he was able to he was just the second half he was accurate, and he has a big arm. he can see the field real well because he's freaking what 6'6".
6'6", yeah.
Yeah. So
he can also reach the ball over at a 2-point conversion if he needs to.
I don't even think that play was called. I just think he did it on his own, to be honest, because you saw Doug Peterson over there like saying, "Hey, that's how you play smart," kind of thing when like they were going to commercial. I think he did that on his own, and just Travis Etienne on that 4th and 1, kicking it out.
What a
Great
call.
Play call by the coach. And I like the Chargers, but I did not believe in them. But that first half, I was like, ugh. I think I told you a while ago, it's like the Chargers are fool's gold because they've really they've beaten no one of great playoff caliber all year long. And the people that they did beat, they barely beat. So just that first half, they came out, Asante Samuel's 3 INTs. That defense was on point until it wasn't. Joey Bosa started. Joey Bosa started
multiple Bosa penalties. With the helmet thing, the person, and then there was a
yelling at the ref,
neutral zone infraction, yelling at the ref, just complete meltdown. Kevin, if you look into these interceptions, they're not. It tells a different story than if you're just looking at a stat line, right? So the first interception was like a double tip that happened to fall into the hands of Asante Samuel. Second interception, I think was interference with Samuel kind of knocking him to the ground. The third one, you could probably put on Lawrence, and then the next one was a little bit of a jump ball with Evan Ingram. So, like anybody, just like the Twitter warriors out there, let's dive into that a little bit, Kevin.
Well, I definitely was following the flow of the game pretty closely. I'm a big believer in it ain't over till it's over. I will never forget the Frank Reich. I mean, obviously I wasn't alive, but I'll never forget the Frank Reich comeback against the Oilers in the play. Yep.
What, Music City Miracle, yeah.
Yeah, all these kinds of games, especially in the playoffs. This is, again, the screws are tighter. Everything gets a little tighter. So I wasn't so down on Trevor Lawrence the way that, like you said, the Twitter warriors were. I was actually afraid that we were going to tilt out of control in our hatred for Trevor Lawrence. I was seeing just the most flagrant things on my timeline. And in my head, I was just like, it's the Chargers. What are we doing here?
Yeah, Chargers going to Charger.
Why are we calling this game? Like, why? Like they play 4 quarters. They play 60 minutes. And yeah, I love what you pointed out, because I think this is true with all interceptions. Interceptions are a quarterback stat. Turnover-worthy plays are a quarterback stat. But you don't get greatness without risk. You don't get those.
That with your quarterback more than anybody.
I have to kind of take that stance because, yeah, exactly. Josh Allen is the ultimate risk-reward player. I was thankful to see Trevor Lawrence just respond to the adversity. Every single time that his body language wasn't down, every single time that he led the Jags back out on the field and just kept going to work and putting together a little bit of drive and hitting Zay Jones and hitting Kirk and hitting Mr. Ingram, I was like, this is actually what we want to see. I mean, even in a loss, the effort would have been commendable. Now we have this folklore. We have this crazy, like, Trevor Lawrence, like he's elevated to a status of like playoff legend, and picking up the pieces, unfortunately, is Mr. Justin Herbert, who we've talked about. We talked about it on the last time I was on the show. I really want to believe that there's more than meets the eye. I really want to believe that there's going to be more that is uncovered. But there was something missing from the Chargers offense this season, and I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, because he passes the eye test and he seems to make good decisions, but it was not a great statistical season from Herbert. I don't know what it is. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I do, and I want to hear Aaron's thoughts, but I want to bring up the stat that, and I'm trusting Anthony on the stats here. He does the research. I'm just going to trust that it's correct. Biggest comeback in Jaguars history. It's not at the bottom, but I know that it was the 3rd largest playoff comeback ever. And this I didn't know, the biggest blown lead in Chargers history. And we just said Chargers going to Charger. This is a team that is known for blowing leads. Oh, yeah. This was the biggest one. That's crazy. And I think it led to the thing, Aaron, I want to ask you about. So Joe Lombardi, offensive coordinator, is gone. Brandon Staley's still there for now. do you think that that's the move that was needed? Do you think Staley should be gone too? A lot of the players, Herbert included, came out in defense of Staley and say, hey, we love playing for this guy. That doesn't always mean anything. People loved playing for Rex Ryan. People loved playing for all sorts of players, for sorts of coaches. Doesn't mean that they were successful. What do you think the Chargers need to do to fix or put Herbert in a position? Because I do think he's got the talent of a Mahomes, of an Allen.
Yeah, he definitely has the talent of both of those guys. They need to stay healthy. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they never really got to play with each other.
What then? Their head coach doesn't need to send their starters out in a meaningless Week 18 game well into the fourth quarter when they're losing.
Great
so that's
point.
what I mean.
Yeah.
That's not a Chargers going to Charger thing. That's Brandon Staley making a very bad head coaching decision, which I think could be the reason they lost this game. If you don't have Mike Williams, it's a different offense.
Oh, yeah. And also, but you got, Chargers got Justin Herbert at, pick 5 a couple of years ago for a reason. They're trash.
6, yeah, because the Dolphins got 2 at 5. Yeah.
That's right. And then
always remember that.
They go around, they win 9 games. They're above 500 his first year, Brandon Staley's first year. And then they make the playoffs, win 10 games the second year. They are playing better. They are, and Justin Herbert's only second year in. So not very many people can go to the Super Bowl like Patrick Mahomes did on his second year. That team, and plus Patrick Mahomes inherited a really good team that was already making the playoffs without him.
I think that this Chargers is roster-wise, I picked them in the preseason to go to the AFC Championship against Buffalo. I thought roster-wise, the moves they made, adding Khalil Mack, adding J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Day in the middle to help run defense, which is a big problem for them last year and this year as a result. I just thought that this team, they continued to draft offensive linemen, Zion Johnson on the inside.
Yep.
I just thought that this team was one of the best rosters top to bottom. So yes, you can say, Aaron, that they improved, and they did. You're right. And maybe Staley should get one more shot. But this team shouldn't have been a 10-win team. They should have been a 13 or 14-win team. They should have been competing with the Chiefs. I actually picked them to win the West. And the fact that they weren't, and they had to squeak into the playoffs and then lose a 27-point lead, that has to come down to coaching in my mind.
Well, you don't have Rashawn Slater either, and Justin Herbert cracked his ribs. What, the first game of the season?
Okay, and then the coach threw him back out there against these same Jaguars, and they got beat 38-10. This is what I mean. I understand the injuries. They lost Joey Bosa for a good portion of the season.
Players got to play, though.
Derwin James has had injury issues. J.C. Jackson, who wasn't playing that well anyway, the big free agent signing, he went on IR. I get all of that. Keenan Allen missed time. Mike Williams missed time. But there's still a lot of these decisions that come back and talk about the fourth quarters. Kevin, you look like you have something very important to say, so I want to turn it to you.
I've just been thinking, because the question remains for me, it's 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 with the Chargers. The math ain't mathin'. They should be better than they are, and
Chargers are charging, but the math ain't mathin'.
I think Brian's onto it the most with coaching. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Good start in getting rid of the OC, but I'll never forget all the weeks when, Herbert turned out to be one of the most disappointing picks in fantasy.
Yeah.
He was not the guy this year. And I don't like confirmation bias. I'm not a fan. I hate it, but I've been skeptical of Justin Herbert, and I don't want to be right. I like him. I think he seems like a cool, I think the league is better when there's more great quarterbacks, and I want to buy into Herbert as a great quarterback, but the top 5 discussion has evolved past Justin Herbert now. I don't know if you guys have observed, but people are throwing Hurts and Dimes in over Herbert consistently.
I don't think I've seen Danny Dimes in that conversation yet. He's been playing great. Don't get me wrong. Hurts, yes, I think this year he was an MVP caliber player. Here's my counter to that, Kevin. Too many people put emphasis on the player themselves. Josh Allen had Sean McDermott and Brian Dable and a very stable Brandon Beane. What a great job they've just done as an organization.
Definitely.
Patrick Mahomes had Andy freaking Reid. Already we can say Hall of Fame coach if he retired right now. Herbert he doesn't have an Urban Meyer, but he just doesn't have that same setup. He's got the roster. He doesn't have the coaching. To me, coaching is such an important factor. The situation they end in. Brock Purdy, as good as he's been, if he's not in that Shanahan system where they've got playmakers all across the board, the best defense in the NFL, he's not looking and getting so many headlines as a 7th round Mr. Irrelevant. So I would like to see, we can start with the OC. Joe Lombardi's gone. I'd like to see what he looks like with a different scheme. He was in the bottom 4 or 5 of the league in average depth of target. He's got one of the best arms in the NFL, and he's dinking and dunking because that's play calling. They are calling his plays. It's not that he can't make the throws. He's made some, when Mike Williams is in, some of those throws he made are just absolute, like, blow you away. Like maybe
Definitely.
even better than Mahomes and Allen sometimes with his just the beauty of his throws. But he wasn't making those throws. He was throwing it, dumping off to tight ends, short slants, plenty of passes for Eckler.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I kind of feel like you have to weight the Eckler targets in that lower average depth of target. I mean, you have to funnel the ball to Eckler if you're the Chargers.
But do you? No, I don't think. I'm not saying you don't, but you don't have to as much.
That's fair. Yeah.
Right. Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, these are fantastic receiving running backs. But if you in 2022, 2023
Tony Pollard.
can put Tony Pollard. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I traded for Pollard in one of my dynasty leagues. I'm very excited.
Jealous.
Him and Tyler Algier. All right, let's not get into that because I'll get too excited. Next year's looking bright. But you have to be able to push the ball down the field. You can't push the ball down the field throwing to running backs. I don't care if you have the greatest LaDainian Tomlinson. I don't care. You have to be able to push the ball down the field. You're going to be more effective.
I can dig
Eckler had an amazing season, and they barely made the playoffs and lost. Blew a 27-point lead. That is in the modern NFL. It's great to have a weapon like that. That is not how the two truly great teams do. That's just not.
Yeah, it should be more of like a pepper it in as opposed to like an A button.
Use it when you need to. Use it when they're so scared of the deep ball that they're not paying attention to Eckler on a short end, and then he catches it and takes it another 30 yards.
I can dig it. I think Eckler and Keenan Allen, I think they're great pieces, but I think you're right. If you can get the Mike Williams and maybe another piece, like, I mean, maybe it's Palmer. I mean, he seems like he's a pretty legit weapon. Hopefully the right OC will maximize the potential because I'm ready to like Justin Herbert. Like I've showed up at the party. I'm just not being let in.
Yeah. Hey, Chargers, let me in. I'm here for the Justin Herbert party. It sounds like a sleepy party.
Send someone to Thailand. Go see what Cliff's up to, and maybe bring him in.
That would be worse. Yeah. I'd rather have Joe Lombardi than Cliff Kingsbury. Kingsbury is not a good play caller. He wasn't in college either. He's riding the coattails of having Patrick Mahomes in college. All right, don't get me started on Kingsbury. But yes, ultimately, Jags pull off the victory. Jacksonville, the city's riding high. Now they got to face the Chiefs. It should be a fun, entertaining game. Chiefs have a weakness. It's going to be in their pass defense. So we know that we've seen that the Jaguars can put up numbers in spurts, especially through the passing game. Should be a fun and entertaining one. Let's go to the Sunday games, starting with my Miami Dolphins, who I was fully prepared to just get blown out of the water. Now, I wouldn't have been if Tua was in, Kevin. I mean, we beat the Bills in week 3, nearly beat them in week 15 or 16. This team has shown that they can compete with Buffalo when all their pieces are at full force, but we didn't have them. Didn't even have Teddy Bridgewater. Skylar Thompson has got traits, but he is not decisive. He holds the ball too long. It gets jittery. It leaves the pocket, but then doesn't scramble. Like I'm just so many plays. I'm like, dude, just run the ball. 5 yards, you got a first down. So he wasn't making good decisions. Wasn't necessarily turning the ball over much until this game, but I had no faith. And 17-0. I'm like, oh, yep, that's what's going to happen. Bills are going to stomp, and that's okay. I was expecting this, but then they started chipping away. And a field goal here and a field goal there. And everybody's texting me. I'm like, guys, don't give me hope here. Please don't give me hope. And then all of a sudden we've got the lead, and it's looking like we can actually pull this thing off. At the end of the day, the better team won, and I do believe that. I picked the Bills to win the Super Bowl. I got to stick to that. But Kevin, obviously, we'll start with you first as a diehard Bills fan. Walk me through your mindset during this game.
Oh, goodness gracious! Walk. Okay, that's not a walk. That's a frantic pace, maybe a little bit of a speed walk, maybe a jog. I will be honest with you. I also got the texts, Brian, but my texts weren't
the
fun
other
texts.
side of it. Yeah.
I was getting the
WTF.
I was getting the panicked dad phone call. I don't like doing this, but I had to ignore a couple calls from my dad, because he's very doomsday. He grew up, he's
4 Super Bowl losses
through the 90s.
Yeah.
He's just waiting for the shoe to drop, and I have to tell him we're not the same team. But I actually, for the first time in years, I put my phone off and away for the whole second half after the Josh Allen strip sack where Miami took the lead. Yeah, I went into the game with a cautious optimism, given that, yeah, it's a third string quarterback and Buffalo is who we think they are. DVOA suggests that. DVOA from that game still suggests that, which I was like, wow, like that's something to be. I'm clinging to that.
Oh, the Bills dominated the game. Let's be real. The Bills dominated the game. The one difference was the Dolphins defense making plays, taking advantage of Josh Allen mistakes, and a one good punt return by Cedric Wilson to set up an additional score. And then Skylar Thompson using that to actually find a little bit of confidence in the second half. And all of a sudden he's like throwing the ball, on time and accurately and decisively. I'm like, where was this guy in the first half?
I thought he was far and away one of the most effective weapons that Miami had. I was actually impressed with Skylar Thompson. And I will be honest with you, pretty disappointed in Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle is probably maybe the biggest loser, quote unquote, the biggest reason why Miami didn't move the ball as effectively as we're used to.
They had dropped passes from Tyreek Hill dropped a pass.
It was
Raheem Mostert dropped a pass. I mean, it was all across the board.
It was shocking.
Not Mostert, Jeff Wilson.
You kind of need your A game to win a game like that, and they didn't get it from those guys. But I would like to know, Aaron, what were your thoughts on the game? Because I can talk about it all day, and I will. I'm excited to. But
yeah, honestly, I was hoping the Dolphins would pull off the upset, just because
a lot of people were. Of course, they were
not
hoping.
a Bills fan whatsoever. But they played good.
Wait, why?
I think Josh Allen, he's a great athlete and everything, but playoff Josh Allen's a different monster. That dude turns the ball over repeatedly, and you saw that against
I'm gonna.
You saw that against the Dolphins in last year.
Last year he was phenomenal in the playoffs. He was like steamrolling guys. He lost a coin toss in overtime, or else he would be in the Super Bowl because I think they would have beat the Bengals.
I think he
I'm
would
a Dolphins fan
still.
coming to Josh Allen.
Yeah, Aaron, I just want to know why. I just want to know why. Hey, you can come for my guy all you want. Just have it together,
Look, he's not that great of a playoff quarterback. He makes mistakes. He makes a lot of mistakes. And if a better team, if they would have had Tua, then they probably would have won that game. Because Josh Allen makes
that
a lot
can
of
be
mistakes.
True, but also the other part cannot be true.
I disagree.
When Josh Allen started his career, Aaron, that's probably what you're relying on because he wasn't very good when he got to the playoffs at the beginning. But last year, steamrolling the Patriots, steamrolling. Then they played the Chiefs, but they were going toe to toe with him, unstoppable.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal
just
game
lost
by
in
him. I'll give you all
overtime.
that.
I don't think he had. I think he had 7 touchdowns, no interceptions over those 2 games. Right? He didn't have any turnovers last playoff. He was basically perfect through 2 games, and it's just that Mahomes got the ball last. But I also think and this is the one point that might be fair here, Kevin, is Josh Allen has been very turnover prone this season, especially in the red zone. He has made costly errors. I don't think that means he's not a good playoff quarterback. I still believe that he has the capability to lead this team to the Super Bowl. But that's just what you take that with the Josh Allen experience. You just know that he's going to do some Superman plays for you, and he's going to do some really questionable decisions because, I don't know, he's Brett Favre-ing it and just, thinks he can do everything. And it's just like you can't do anything about it. You're just like, oh, well, that's the Allen experience.
Yeah, I got to say, I think it's fair to say that the game's different with Tua under center. But I think there might be a more back and forth game that we might have, and a little bit more of a traditional game flow. This was kind of like right hook and then a right hook back and then jabs till the end. But I don't think it's fair to say that Josh Allen's not a great playoff quarterback. I think he's one of the top 3 in the NFL. And I think it's like Brian suggested, I think the numbers prove it. And that's somebody I'm hitching my wagon to every week, and whatever it means. For like you said, Brian, the variability is super high, and I'll ride it. I will say it's a little bit. I think there needs to be a little bit more of a concerted effort on taking profits in the future, especially against Cincinnati. I would like to see some more checkdowns, believe it or not.
You'll need that against the top competition because you will not be facing a third string quarterback
Right.
with questionable game clock management, and the coaching has something to do with that too. I mean,
that
ultimately,
was
that's what it came
terrible.
down to. Is the
Yeah.
Dolphins couldn't get a freaking 4th and 1 sneak off, and they got delay of games or timeouts.
Crazy.
And if you do that, I think the main point is if you do that against the Bengals or if you do that against the Chiefs, you won't get that chance to be the Superman. It'll be too late.
Absolutely.
I think James Cook really did show up saying like, hey, you throw me the ball, check it down to me. I can go and do some things with it. Because I think he scored once off of a check
He did
down.
score 1 touchdown. Yeah.
I absolutely love Baby Cook. He's definitely one of the most exciting pieces of Buffalo's offense in the future. Like, I think that's like a good buy low candidate for Dynasty, or maybe buy medium. I don't know how low you're going to get him at this point.
Singletary's a free agent, so
yeah. I would like to see Singletary return personally. We were talking earlier about the difference between very good and elite. I believe Aaron was bringing that up with San Francisco. I think Devin Singletary is a very good running back.
Yeah.
And I think he fits what they want to do on offense quite a lot. And I have a lot of, Bills fan friends of mine that think he's a liability and think that, as long as we have Singletary, we'll never have an elite running back. But he goes out there and he gets 4 to 6 yards.
Yeah.
And he makes a couple plays a game that are just like intangible plays. He's pretty good in pass protection. I saw some great blitz pickups from him against Miami. So that's going to be a very interesting conversation to track as well. The one thing that I will say that I'm actually curious about your guys' opinion on, because especially Brian, because we know Aaron's a little bit of a hater of the Bills. So there might be some bias in your answer. But I want you both to answer this because I'm curious. Where were because I'm hearing a lot of conversations about Sean McDermott maybe not being the best game manager in the playoffs. And I saw that a little bit against the Chiefs, but I was certain he would learn. And I'm hearing a lot of qualms about how he coached the game on Sunday. If you guys have thoughts on that, I'm very eager to find out like what you guys have to say about that.
I honestly didn't see any issues with the game management on the Buffalo side. I saw plenty on the side of Miami.
Yeah.
I think it came down to the Dolphins just being opportunistic on the mistakes that Allen did make, and one of them was a bounce off of Cole Beasley. So it's like one of those things where they caught it. Like these are the kind of that some games those balls fall to the ground, and some games they pop right into Javon Holland's hands. So it's just one of those things that the Dolphins just kept getting those. And there were some plays where Allen is fumble prone. I mean, you just have to say that. You hit Allen because of the way that he runs the ball, and especially when he's scrambling still in the backfield, you can get him to drop the ball. And that happened multiple times. Sometimes it went out of bounds. Sometimes the Dolphins picked it up for a scoop and score. So I think that is really the difference in the game, not necessarily the game management. I liked a lot of the play calling. I thought they were smart to attack Miami deep early because Miami was trying to press and kind of throw off some of the timing. And Xavier Howard, as good as he's been in the past, can't keep up with Stephon Diggs. So what do you do when you're doing cover zero and you have all these blitzes and they really coming up? Just throw it over the top. Let Diggs literally run by him. And 1 or 2 of those Allen missed, and one he hit. And actually, I think he hit 2 of those. One for a catch that was not the short of the touchdown. One was actually a touchdown. That was the Gabe Davis one. I didn't see any. I've seen clock management issues from McDermott before. I did not see it in this game.
Cool. What about you, Aaron? You got any thoughts on that?
Mike McCarthy, he's been pretty bad when it comes to clock management. I mean, last year we saw that whole fiasco with Dak and the 14 seconds left or whatever against the Niners. This year he's kind of picked it up. So I know about clock management, and I don't really see it when I watch Bills games.
Cool.
I don't understand where that's coming from. I think he's a very good coach. And maybe there is some clock management stuff that doesn't get him past to the Andy Reid's, Bill Belichick.
Andy Reid people used to say Andy Reid was horrible at clock management.
He had his moments.
I think the one thing you have to worry about as a Bills fan is not clock management. You have to worry about Josh Allen making a timely mistake, throwing an interception in the red zone against a team like the Bengals or the Chiefs, where you can't afford those mistakes because they're going to go right down and score on you. That's a bigger concern than anything McDermott's doing from clock management.
Definitely. And I think I would like to suggest as well, there's been a lot of, and rightfully so from myself, if Buffalo shows up like that, they won't beat Cincinnati, right? But I think, spoiler alert, you could say the same thing about what we saw from Cincinnati. You know what I'm saying? Like,
we'll talk about that. We got 2 more games.
I think the shoe is on each foot for whatever more you guys want to say about the Bills game. I'm happy to continue because I could talk about it all day. I love it.
I think we've said all we need to say.
Yeah, I think so too.
The Dolphins played much better than I thought they would. They were opportunistic. I'm glad that it was at least exciting till the end because I don't get a lot of Dolphins playoff time. You guys, as Cowboys and Bills fans, you've had plenty of playoff time. I don't get that.
Not recently for the Cowboys.
Yeah, but you still make it. You may not be winning, but you made it to the playoffs last year. I don't even get that. This is our third playoff appearance since 2000. All right, guys. So we don't need to talk about it anymore.
Huge credit to you guys. Huge credit to McDaniel. Yeah. Unfortunately, the like you talked about the 4th and 1 and all the clock management stuff, like
the vaping on the sideline.
All
that cool. Stuff. Dude, I'm a McDaniel fan.
He's awesome.
Personally and as a coach.
Now that you guys are eliminated, I can say I really like him.
All that noise about maybe they'll if they fired him, I would have not been a Dolphins fan. I would have been like, screw you, Stephen Ross. I'm out.
He deserves a lot of respect and credit, and so does the whole team. I mean, what fight in that game, and what a bright future. I
kept saying that. What this team is playing with heart, that is what comes down to coaching. Let's talk about another team that's played with heart all season. This was actually one of my more confident picks. I was very confident that the Giants would win this game against the Minnesota Vikings. I have, watched these teams all year long. We really dove in deep this on the preview show about, that they were 11-5 or 12-5, whatever the Vikings record was going into this. 13-4, actually. Shit, they only lost 4 games. And the Giants, didn't really get into the playoffs until week 17. But this is a team that plays with heart. You're familiar, obviously, with Dable and then what he's done, assimilating that coaching staff, getting the most out of a quarterback who they didn't even pick up his 5th-year option in Daniel Jones. And now people are talking about, that he has the ability to maybe get into that elite level, especially if he wins another playoff game or two. Against a Vikings team that has had its tricks and just, got lucky or found ways to win 11 one-score victories. But guess who was second in one-score victories? The New York Giants at 8-4-1. So let's talk about this. Aaron, you're the NFC East guy here, so I'll start with you. There's three NFC East teams still left going in division weekend, everybody but the Commanders. What did you think watching this Giants team? Pretty decisive. I know it came down to the end, but this game was never... The Giants had the lead almost the entire game. They were in control of this game start to finish.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about that, being a Cowboys fan?
You know what? Yes, I'm a hater, but I'm a fair hater. I did have the Giants winning this game because Minnesota, they never really done anything to convince you like, oh, they're going to win games in the playoffs. Yeah, they made the playoffs, but were they going to win? Nah, probably not. And the Giants, Brian Daboll has this team firing on all cylinders. Saquon Barkley is healthy, and this dude is... I know he didn't have that great of a game, but still, he scored 2 touchdowns.
Well, they also only gave him the ball like 12 times because
Daniel Jones had more runs than he did.
He was shredding the Vikings defense. Why do you need to hand the ball off when you can have him go for 300-plus yards and almost 80 yards rushing? It was the Daniel Jones show. Saquon looked great when he was in. He had that one amazing touchdown run. Mm-hmm. He did all he needed to do.
Yeah, and you just got to keep riding that if you're the Giants. Make him high percentage passes, run the ball when they're playing man to man and no one's really paying attention to what you're doing back there, and just hope Saquon continues to do what he's been doing. And that defense, Thibodeau is definitely stepping up big time the last 6 weeks or so, and it was good to see it because I do like the Giants somewhat.
Oh,
I like them.
That's
I respect that. I respect the Giants because. There's just a lot of history between us and Dallas and whatnot. But, I'm excited to see what they do with Daniel Jones. I don't know if they're going to keep him or not. I think it might be stupid
100%
if they don't.
Keeping him.
Yeah.
So I was talking to my co-founder, Joe, for Legit Football, specifically about this game and how he, talking about where Daniel Jones, who did he look like? And I don't remember the quarterback he mentioned. I said, honestly, you know who he reminded me of? Josh Allen. He had a little Josh Allen in him. I think Dable was able to kind of bring that out of him. The fact that he was happy to run and get chunk yardage when he could. The fact that he was able to just really shred that Vikings defense and spread the ball around to multiple playmakers. Guys like Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James. Like, these are like guys that
you don't even know about.
You might not even made the roster, right?
I'm so glad you brought up the weapons because that's a piece of this Giants team that I think is arguably maybe the most unique in that they have that like right on the cusp of a rebuild, like right before a rebuild.
We thought it would take a couple years. We're like,
you
give
got
Dable some time.
Yeah, you got the overpaid talent, the Galladay. You got the underdeveloped Tony, who's got the mouth. And what do? You give it to the undrafted guys, the practice squad guys, and they're going out there. And you said it, Brian, and I think it's a great point. They're playing with heart. And Darius Slayton is just Mr. Underrated for some reason. And Richie James looks like a decent ancillary weapon, and I don't know. He looks like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3 on a good offense. Isaiah Hodgins, who I've always liked, and I always wanted to see get more of a shake in Buffalo. I'm thrilled to see him balling out, and I'm not mad at being. It's hard to forecast that when you have like guys that are ahead of him, but he's looking like the real deal. I think he could be a wide receiver 2. I mean, I think they need a true 1. I think they need like an alpha wide receiver.
Imagine if they had a 1. They got Daniel Bellinger, a rookie tight end, who's not putting up huge numbers, but making plays when he needs to.
Yeah.
You mentioned the defense. Adoree Jackson, I know he didn't do it by himself, but they really concentrated their efforts on bracketing Justin Jefferson in this game. I don't think there was a single route he ran where there weren't at least 2 guys on him. They did everything they could to take him away, and it worked. I think he had 7 catches for like 40-something yards. To contain one of the best receivers in the NFL the way they did was a masterstroke.
Yeah, it's hard to. There's part of me that wants to take a shot at the Vikings for not getting him more involved. I mean, they did what they could do in the first half. It really felt like he disappeared down the stretch, which was really disappointing because it felt like if you want your season in anybody's hands, it's Jay Jeff's, and we've seen that in countless numbers of Vikings games where.
Well, let's talk about one particular play where it should have been. I see Aaron laughing. You know what I'm going to say.
4th and 8.
4th and 8. You've got
2 yards.
Justin Jefferson with your season on the line, and you throw to, and now TJ Hawkinson had a fantastic game, but you throw to TJ Hawkinson in the flats, and he gets tackled with, 5 yards to go.
Yeah.
Inexplicable.
What, Aaron, what's going on with Kirk? Is this just Kirk being Kirk?
Look, I think that was rolling up on the 6 o'clock hour where it's close to prime time.
Prime time.
And prime time, Kirk Cousins just started to show up.
He knew it was there. It was getting closer and closer.
So, Kirk Cousins, I know he said that he felt pressure and he thought he was going to get sacked. So he just wanted to get the ball out. That's what he said, I think, in one of his press conferences. But
then
still,
why don't you get the ball out to Justin freaking Jefferson?
Exactly.
Kevin knows this because that's what he was doing against the Bills.
4th and 19.
Where's JJ? Let me just throw it to him. I don't care that I've got 19 yards. Oh, look at that. He just mossed like 4 Bills defenders.
I'll never forget that catch he made on Cam Lewis. That was one of the greatest plays I've ever seen. Admittedly, Cam Lewis should have knocked the ball down, but he caught the ball. And that's what alpha, true number 1, top 3 wide receivers in the NFL do. And he didn't have a chance to do it. And it was really sad to watch. Like, I was actually watching that game with a Vikings fan and a Giants fan. Very fun dynamic, by the way. 10 out of 10 recommend. And that moment, like, it was so sad because, like, he had all this faith. He was calling him Kirko Chains. My boy Zach, he had all this faith in the Vikings. And he just got up and he was like, all right, guys, I'll see you soon. And he just walked out. It was so sad.
Painful. Vikings fans, be glad that you made it to the playoffs. You got the number 3 seed. You won the NFC North. Take your trophy for what it's worth.
I think they have something to say about your Lions favorites in the North take for next year. I think the Vikings have something to say about it.
They need to fix that defense first.
Definitely.
The Lions beat them by 11 the last time they played. They dominated that game. So any good team that they played this year, any good team they played, Dallas is on that list, they got pummeled. It wasn't even
except
close.
For Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Buffalo was the one, but they were getting waxed in that game, and then they just found a way to.
It was
Kirk just like he wrote on a napkin, Justin Jefferson, no matter what, and just kept chucking it up, and it worked somehow. And there was a weird, 1 yard play with Josh Allen, whatever. That was a fluke of a game, but every other game it was not even close. And so you need to fix the defense.
Definitely.
You got to get a new defensive coordinator in there. You need somebody fresher. You need somebody younger. And you have to find a way to make this offense a little bit more efficient and not just so heavily reliant on Justin Jefferson. So I do think, as great as they played this year, they still won 11 one-score games. It was the most in the history of the NFL. Typically, that regresses to the means, no matter how good you are, because there's so many balls that might bounce one way. Maybe next year, Josh Allen won't fumble the ball on his own half yard. These are the kind of things you cannot count on year to year. So I don't think the Vikings should rest on their laurels. I don't think they should say, oh, we're the favorites in the NFC North. No, I do think the Lions are the favorite. Maybe the Packers are in that discussion with how they finish the year if Rodgers comes back. I would put the Vikings third if Rodgers comes back, because I don't think their success is sustainable year to year without some major improvements, especially on the defense.
Any idea off the top of your head what their DVOA was looking like? Offense, defense, special teams?
Overall, we brought this up on the preview show. It was overall DVOA since week 13 was 30th.
Yeah,
they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. Their offense was middle of the road. It was 18, which wasn't great, but whatever. Yeah. Their defense was 26 or 27. Overall, their DVOA was 30th.
Feels like the ship is slowly sailing on Dalvin Cook as well, with all due respect. He was a non-factor in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I actually saw a stat from Fantasy Pros. The top four, and Aaron, you'll like one of the benefits of this stat. Top four running backs who created yards. So it's like a mixture of yards after carry, average yards after carry per rush, and yak percentage. Top four. Number one, Tony Pollard.
Yeah,
that's
in the NFL.
Yeah,
he's so shifty.
Tyler Algier was on that list too.
Wow.
Believe it or not, he was number 3 for total yards created. The ranking system they came up with.
As a rookie,
Nick
that's
Chubb.
impressive.
Nick Chubb was number 4. I'm blanking on who number 2 was, but on the bottom 4, Dalvin Cook was in there. The bottom 4, minimum 125 attempts. Antonio Gibson was in there. Zeke wasn't. Surprising.
I thought Zeke was going to be. I almost made that joke.
Zeke wasn't.
I was trying to take the high road there,
but Dalvin Cook was. So that just tells you, And I went to Florida State. I'm a huge Dalvin Cook fan.
Me too. It's sad.
Running backs, there comes a point when their efficiency starts to go down. I hate Aaron. You're seeing it with Zeke. Zeke had his great years. You're lucky you have Pollard. Alexander Madison in Minnesota has made it seem like he's not going to come back. So I think the Vikings actually have a lot to do this offseason. And they can't rely on the fact that they finished 13-4.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go on to the final Sunday game. We talked about it a little bit because we're hinting at Cincinnati. There were 2 games where the teams were starting possibly third-string quarterbacks, at least second-string quarterbacks. This was the other one, another division matchup. So we talked about Buffalo, Miami, Cincinnati, Baltimore. They literally played a week ago. Anthony Brown was the quarterback. It wasn't a blowout, but it was never in doubt. Cincinnati controlled the whole game. Fast forward to this game, and it takes a 98-yard crazy, like one of these plays that you cannot predict, where Tyler Huntley tried to reach the ball over the end zone. They weren't even that close. They were at like the 1.5-yard line. Gets knocked out of his hands. Sam Hubbard, 98 yards for the touchdown and the win for the Bengals. Kevin, this is the team you're going to be playing, so I'll let you start with this one.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to soapbox a little bit.
Okay.
I appreciate you.
Let's go.
I have to admit, my name is Kevin, and I am a little bit terrified of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I have used that fear to find little things to nitpick about them. And this is just full transparency. I'm using this platform to be honest with you. I'm using this platform to get this off my chest. I am a little less afraid of them after watching that game. I will say that much. And I still feel confident in Buffalo to win that game. But that being said, Joe Burrow is Joe Cool. And he did a great job, especially in the first half, being Joe Cool, despite being sacked a lot. That offensive line looks a little bit suspect. And
now Jonah Williams out. 3 of their 5 starters are out now.
And the defense was looking very suspect. Honestly, both pass and run. I kind of thought that the D-line would be what they would hang their hat on. But Huntley and Dobbins and pretty much everybody on the Ravens were finding a lot of space to operate against the Bengals. And I was very surprised by that. Is that something that you think is, like an outlier? Or do you think that that's something that we can look for next week as an opportunity for Buffalo to exploit?
Kevin, I'm going to instill the fear right back in you right here. And I'll get Aaron's take on this too. So it was like 3 weeks ago, and we only got to see one drive. But Cincinnati absolutely marched right down the field in Buffalo in that Monday night game prior to the Damar Hamlin injury. Here's what I picked Cincinnati to win this game. I had no doubt that they wouldn't, but I thought it would be close. The Ravens, besides the fact that it's a division matchup, their defense matches up very well with Cincinnati. They play a very physical style. They can really disrupt the timing. You've got Marlon Humphrey. You've got Marcus Peters. Kyle Hamilton has been playing really well as a safety. They're able to really play physical. Roquan Smith has been one of the best ads, maybe the best mid-season ad for any team.
Mm-hmm.
So they can stop the run. They were a top 4 run team since the Roquan Smith acquisition in DVOA. And the fact that they can play those receivers so physical, on top of the fact that the offensive line is beat up, that's what the reason they were able to get so much pressure on Joe. It's just they line up perfectly. It was the 3rd time playing him. All of those things are not true on Buffalo. Buffalo is they're able to get pass rush. That's going to come in handy, but they don't really play a physical style of in the secondary. That's not really their style. Tre'Davious White's a fantastic cover corner, not known for being like a press cover guy to just like shut down. So I think the Bengals are going to be able to put up points. I think the Bills are going to be able to put up points. I think it's going to be a matchup of just 2 quarterbacks going back at it, and maybe kind of a Bills-Chiefs playoff game from last year kind of vibe. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that you can't really just look at this one game and be like, oh, this is how they're going to play against us. Like Brian said, 3rd time they played this year, divisional matchup, all of that stuff comes out, and that's like extra motivation. But when you go up and face someone that you haven't seen, I'm not going to count that one Monday night game, and then you don't know how to quite play them very well, So I think Joe Burrow, he's going to take this win as an L, and he's going to get his offense ready to go. The offensive line, he's used to that because last year he had a terrible offensive line and still made the Super Bowl. So this year, he's going to do the same thing. I don't know if he'll beat the Bills, but he's going to have this team ready to go. It's going to be a fun game to watch, definitely. And I just think you also, if you're the Baltimore Ravens, run the ball with J.K. Dobbins right there, not have Tyler Huntley try to dive in for the touchdown.
Dobbins feels the same way, by the way, in case you guys didn't see his ranting quote. And even more than if Tua had been with the Dolphins, if Lamar's in this game, the Ravens win this game.
That's true.
I think, it's definitely a huge disappointment because, like I said, watching the game, it really felt like the Ravens had it in the bag. Like they controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
Long, sustained drives. They also kept the ball out of Burrow's hands.
Huntley looked the best he's looked all season. I was actually, weirdly, this is going to sound like the weirdest thing ever. I'm just going to be completely honest with you guys. I was actually a Huntley stan prior to this season.
Well, he looked great in filling in for Lamar last year.
He was a taxi squad hold of mine in Dynasty, and I was proud. I was proud of that. And then, the big Lamar injury, and I'm taking him off the practice squad. I'm figuring out who I'm going to cut to keep room for Tyler Huntley. And I was pretty disappointed on the whole this season. He really let me down as a person who historically believed, and he looked the best he's looked all year in that game. And it felt like a game that was there for the taking. And even up to the final play, even after the ridiculous 98-yard ridiculous return, which was awesome to watch. And I did think there was a block in the back on the end of that play. I don't know if you guys
there clearly was a block in the back.
I was a little bit like, oh, okay, we're not going to call that. All right, word.
I didn't know Mark Andrews had speed like that, though.
Yeah, that was cool to watch. Wow. I love the effort. That's like football guy.
Can't blame Andrews. He did everything he could.
He could. But it'll be really interesting to see. I think forecasting, I think you both mentioned, that specific matchup, it was kind of favorable 3rd time they play, and we all agree both teams won't win if they play how they played last week. Both teams can't lose. I don't think both teams will show up like that in this game. I will say, to your point, Brian, Cincinnati looked about as sharp on the first drive against Baltimore as they did on the first drive against Buffalo.
True.
I think Burrow's great with scripted plays. I think that's one of the greatest feathers in his cap is he's so sharp between the ears that on scripted plays he's going to go out there first drive of halves. He's just that kind of player, and I love that.
He can read it so well. He can go through his progressions so insanely quick and find the guy.
I love that about Joe Burrow. I'm very happy to say that I have graduated from being a hater. No offense, Aaron. No, I'm just kidding. but into appreciating greatness, and it's
being a hater is fun.
It looks fun. I miss it sometimes, but Mahomes is great. Burrow's great. It's going to be a fun battle. But so that'll be interesting to see. I feel like DVOA is like I said, my best friend right now as far as hope that I'm clinging to. That Buffalo has a good chance to win that game. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm not gonna. I got the preview show coming up on Friday. I'm not gonna.
You're saving it
just yet. I'm
I can
saving
respect
it.
that.
I'm saving it. I also need to dive into the metrics a little bit more. I have a process for picking my games. I went 5-1, by the way.
Nice.
Let's go into the only game. You talk about greatness. The only game I did not pick correctly, and this is a game where obviously we'll start with Aaron on this one. Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
The GOAT, Tom Brady, the bane of our existence, Kevin, for 20 years in the AFC East. But I like him. Whatever. I don't have. He's a buck. Same. Mad respect. Greatest of all time. 7 Super Bowl rings. Can't deny that.
Yeah.
But I had every belief, Aaron, that, and I told you this before we started recording, that Brady at home in the playoffs. I know this Bucs team has been pretty dreadful this season. They should have lost to the Panthers. The Panthers should have been this division winner. Against a team, Dak with his worst game of the season against Sam Howell, and it's like, what? It just seemed like tailor-made, but no. The Cowboys had a ceiling game. Dak had a ceiling game. I want to start with this stat. It was 31-14 final score, but even that, I feel like it felt like it was a 60-point game. EPA, which is expected points added, it's a way to measure an individual play. How much did that individual play, and therefore a player, add to the total points scored versus an average player? EPA is one of the advanced metrics that I like. Dak's performance in this game was 10th or 11th best EPA performance in a playoff game since the year 2000. Like, this was about as peak Dak as Dak gets. 4 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. Had 7 or 8 straight games with interceptions coming into this one. No turnovers. Found CeeDee Lamb. Found Schultz twice. Pollard with big chunk runs. It was just like everything was working for them. Parsons, I've got a stat I'll look up in a second of all the things that he racked up. But Aaron, floor is yours. Celebrate your Cowboys victory. Who did you pick? Let's let everybody know. Who did you pick?
I will start there. I am a Cowboy lover. I love the Cowboys. I will die for them. Not really.
Please don't.
But I am not one of those typical Cowboy fans that is always saying this is our year. I'm a realist, and we've never beat Tom Brady before. Tom Brady is deadly in the playoffs, as y'all know. And I just, from what I've seen from Dak the last 7-8 weeks, wasn't inspiring. And nothing told me that we could go into this game and win. I knew it was going to be close. I thought it was going to be close.
I did too. I will say that. I had trouble picking the game. I figured it would be close. I didn't think it would be a blowout by either team.
Mm-hmm. And I obviously picked Tampa Bay to win just purely because of Tom Brady. And that defense actually is pretty good. They don't have really good pass rushers on that side, but they are able to stop the run. And what we've seen before with Dak is, if you stop the run and you make him throw, 30 plus times, he's going to throw a pick 6. He's going to throw, 2 more extra interceptions and stuff. Like, he's just not that great when he doesn't have a run game to lean off of, play action and all that. But yesterday, I don't know what the heck got into him, but he was balling out. He was running, which is something I've been screaming and yelling for all year long for him to do. And just go get those couple of extra yards. It doesn't matter if it's a first or not. Like, let's keep moving the ball forward. Let's not make dumb plays and throw it away or take sacks or whatever. And Kellen Moore was in his bag yesterday, calling some really good plays for Dak to succeed. I was a little disappointed in CeeDee Lamb. The first drive, I think he had 2 drops. But then in the second half, he came up with a couple of big clutch catches, which is nice to see for your wide receiver 1. Dalton Schultz, that was Dak's favorite target before Dalton Schultz or Dak had got hurt. So seeing him rise up again, that was nice to see. Tony Pollard, that boy's bad. He got that good speed. He's shifty. He's elusive. He's nice. Zeke, I love you, but I'm glad they started with Tony Pollard and they gave him, the lion's share of the carries this game. But Zeke, he's that guy, that battering ram. You need 2 yards. He could probably go get you that 2 yards. Tony Pollard, if you need a big chunk play, he'll go get you that. But Michael Parsons, he was relentless on that defensive end.
Let's talk about Micah. 3 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 2 pass breakups, 2 QB hits, 9 QB pressures by himself. That's the second most by any player in a game this season. Who had number 1?
Ooh.
Him.
Micah Parsons had number 1 with 10 back in week 2. Trick question, Kevin. Good job.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Yeah, so the both sides of the ball just dominating. The defense looked great. But let's talk about the Bucs. We got to talk about both sides. Kevin, as I mentioned, Brady tortured us for 2 decades.
Yeah.
And he throws his first red zone interception since 2019 in this game. The Bucs defense, and they had the pass defense. We talked about DVOA on the Friday preview. Both the Cowboys pass defense and the Bucs pass defense had been bottom 5 in DVOA and pass defense since week 13. But man, the Bucs Cowboys could do what they wanted. The air. There was no pressure. There was no pass rush. On the other side of it, there was the offensive line for the Bucs just was so porous, and Brady had no time to throw and was just getting harassed. Just an awful game all around. They haven't had a run game all season, so that wasn't surprising. Yeah. But just the complete domination. Is Brady? Did he just play his last game with the Bucs?
I feel pretty confident that he played his last game with the Bucs, and
same.
I feel about equally as confident that he has not played his last game.
Same, yeah.
Yep.
I'm feeling it. I think
good.
Vegas.
Yeah, I would love to see Vegas. That would be really fun. Him and Devontae Adams for 1 year would just be
back with Josh McDaniels.
Oh,
yeah.
Just as an NFL fan, that is chef's kiss. I will say, yeah, I was a little disappointed in his entire season. Not really through any fault of his own. It kind of seemed like pretty similar to the Chargers in that like there was just that missing piece, and they never figured it out. It never felt like a good offense watching it for some reason. There was just always miscommunications, and Brady doing the slow, chin strap rip off and moving to the bench. And like, he's not going to snicker or sneer at his wide receivers the way Rodgers does, but you could feel it. You could feel Brady was, especially Mike Evans.
He just takes it out on the Microsoft Surface.
Exactly. Just throws tablets. It was weird seeing him and Mike Evans be so far removed from where they've been in the last couple of years. But that's all right. I think they got they got to take a long, hard look at themselves in the mirror as an organization. And it might not be as fun to be a Bucs fan for a couple of years. We'll see. That'll be a fun one to track. I do want to give a shout out to Dak Prescott in this game. Piggybacking off of what you and Aaron were saying. I think you could put Dak Prescott prior to that game and maybe prior to this season in the same tier as Justin Herbert, just waiting for them to take that step. Mm-hmm. And I think you could pretty safely say that, like, where Justin Herbert hasn't taken the step, I think Dak has. And I think that game is the feather in his cap that says, move over, Mr. Herbert. I'll take my spot in the maybe second tier of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
My problem with Dak is the consistency. And
yes.
You see his ceiling, and he absolutely he belongs in elite quarterback status. You got the Niners next, Aaron.
Yeah.
You need a ceiling game again. Can you count on the road for a second game? And let's say it, Dallas won their first playoff road game since 1993. Yeah, so good for you. You got that monkey off your back.
Your
McCarthy's job is probably safe now. You got at least one playoff victory, right?
Yes.
But you need that again. You need to play that perfectly again. Can the Cowboys do it? They're only got 6 days. Not that there's a huge deal, but the one less day because they played on Monday. They're going to play Sunday against the Niners, against a team that has won 11 straight. Doesn't matter. They have a rookie quarterback, best defense in the NFL. How confident are you, Aaron, that Dak can do that again at Levi's Stadium on Sunday?
You said Dak is very inconsistent, and he is. And I'm not very confident. I need Dak to continue to show me that he can do this. And like I said, he hasn't been playing that inspiring kind of football all year long. He'll have a game here, he'll have a game there, but in between, he has a couple of games where he's just average. I just hope they don't fall back down
He
to
was
that.
below average in that Washington game.
Oh God,
yeah, that
yes.
was ridiculous.
Yes, that Washington game in the first game of the season, before he hurt his thumb against the Bucks, he was garbage.
Yeah.
So now like Washington, the Niners, they have a good pass rush. They have a good defensive line, great linebackers with Fred Warner's. Yes. Yeah. And oh man, I just don't know if Dak is going to be, because they'll confuse him. And Dak, he's not. I know during the year he got confused a lot. Him and CeeDee Lamb both got confused a lot as far as like where they're supposed to go, or where the ball was supposed to go. So, and they kind of picked up that connection towards the back half of the year because CeeDee Lamb started going off. But like I said, I'm a realist, and I just don't see Dak playing that great. It's going to be the defense that's going to have to play great, and maybe get a scoop and score, or Turpin, gets a punt return for a touchdown or something. We're going to need to get points some way besides just the offense.
Parsons is I think the key to that game.
Mm-hmm.
I do. He needs to wreck Purdy. He needs to single-handedly kind of turn the tide of the game. Give them short fields where Dak is not having to drive 85 yards against the best defense in the NFL.
Get in that young man's head, right?
Yeah.
I have to say, Aaron, sidebar. Seeing how you talk about your own team, I feel a little bit better about how you were talking about Josh Allen. A little bit better. You're a tough. You're a tough critic. You're a tough critic.
I'm a realist.
I am confident that this will be a great game, and I'm confident that Dak will give us some great Dak moments. But that being said, I think where the X factor lies, and I think Brian already hinted at it, I think this is going to be a game of which great offense can get the leg up on the opposing team's great defense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would be very nervous if I were the Cowboys. I absolutely love Trayvon Diggs. He's the kind of boom bust player that I would sign on the dotted line for any day. But I do get a little bit afraid that he gets beat by Ayuk or Debo or whoever they put on him, because he is going to take those risks on those 50-50 balls. And Shanahan is so smart at getting guys in the wrong positions. So it's going to be really interesting to see how, Trayvon matches up with the insane complement of weapons that San Francisco has.
Well, and specifically what makes the Niners playmakers great is not that they burn you with speed, is that they break tackles. And if you're going for the pick and you're not lining yourself up in position to make a solid tackle on a Debo Samuel, on a Christian McCaffrey, on a George Kittle, you are going to get demolished, and then it's going to be 60 yards after the catch in the end zone. That is how they beat you. So I'm worried about the discipline on the Dallas side, but we're not going to break down to the game anymore. I just want to get Aaron's high-level thoughts. Definitely. We're going to let Aaron ride high. His team won. Kevin, your team won.
I'm done riding high already.
We're all riding high.
Like, I'm down. I got my high. It's only less than 24 hours since my team unexpectedly beat the greatest of all time. Enjoy the victory a little bit longer, Aaron.
I can't say the same thing, Aaron. I can't say the same thing. For me, it's I need more.
Well, it's Super Bowl or bust for the Bills. Let's be real. The expectations are different. I picked the Cowboys not to make the playoffs this year. And while there's always expectations of Dallas fans, Aaron, you said that, this is our year. I still think people in general were not expecting Dallas to be this good.
No.
Whereas everybody expected Buffalo to be this good. So there's a slightly different level in expectation. Aaron, the Cowboys are going to be underdogs again. The Bills, I haven't seen the line, but it's in Buffalo, so I would assume favorites. Yeah, so I would assume Buffalo is a favorite at home. Yeah. So there is a different kind of Aaron's like, I'm just happy to be here. We won a game. Kevin's like, if we're not hosting Lombardi, then I hate my life.
It's true. I will say, historically, and I think you seem like the kind of guy who would understand where I'm coming from here. Historically, I try not to lean into Super Bowl or bust mentality. I think that the greats and the I think perspective suggests you have to try to be as good as you can for as long as you can and hope to get lucky. So I'm hoping that this is just another building block year for the Bills. And don't get me wrong, I really would love it. But what they've gone through, the adversity that they've gone through, the injuries, I have a little bit of empathy and a little bit of leeway for this specific team compared to how I might have before the season or in the middle of the season, that where I'll still be like, okay, that's a heck of a year. That's a heck of a fight that they put up. But that being said, again, I want it. I don't want it bad. I taste it.
Well,
So
big challenge for both of your teams coming up next week.
Yeah.
We will be back on Friday to preview the divisional round weekend and see which of these teams actually take the next step. I want to thank Aaron Salazar from the Has Been Sports podcast, Dallas Cowboys fan, coming on, breaking down all the games for us. I want to thank Kevin Phillip Fox, the Buffalo Trill, riding high with his Bills victory, eking out against my Miami Dolphins with Skylar Thompson, the quarterback picked right before Brock Purdy, by the way. Let's throw that out there.
I love it.
And thanks as always, Anthony Wayner, the Lions fan, whose Lions didn't make the playoffs, but who we started the show saying, hey, things are looking up for you guys. Make sure to stay tuned. Again, we'll be breaking down all the games coming up this weekend on the Friday show. This has been the Legit Football NFL Podcast. I'm Brian McFadden. We'll see you next time.